Hey, and we're back with another episode of Before You Buy. You know, that show where we give you some straight up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. Today, we're just taking a quick look at the PC version of Spider-Man 2 that just released. Look, Sony tends to take a while to get games onto PC, but when they do actually finally show up, they're usually decent ports. Sometimes they have some issues, but at this point, we're hoping they got it mostly figured out. Our expectations were pretty high here. And with the last minute news that this game, along with like a bunch of other PlayStation ports, no longer requiring a PlayStation Network account to play, we were feeling pretty good. Unfortunately, the port isn't totally perfect. It's plagued by some kind of annoying issues we experienced that do drag things down. Now, realistically, we expect a lot of these problems to get smoothed out in the next few days. I mean, hell, there's actually been a patch as we were working on this, and the game's only been out for a few hours. This is just a quick look, but if you're looking to pick up Spider-Man 2 to truly test your top-of-the-line PC, then you might want to wait a little bit for them to smooth out some of these issues. Man, but if you do want a game to really show off the capabilities of your PC, then when it's working perfectly, this is the game to get, because have you seen the requirements? If you want to play on maxed out ultimate settings, then you're going to need an RTX 4090. That's the bottom line. You need the best card currently available. I know like reviews and stuff are dropping for 5090s and 5080s, but still. So that had us worried about what the overall performance would look like at 4K, because the recommended settings made it sound like the game could only run at that resolution with all the ray tracing effects enabled at 60 FPS. But thankfully, that's not the case. There are a few other significant things in the PC version here, like ultra wide monitor support that I absolutely love. It goes all the way to 49.9. It looks incredible there. DualSense support for PC with all the haptics and adaptive trigger stuff from the PS5 version is good. You have to have the controller plugged in for that stuff to work, though. I don't know why. It's just a quirk of the tech, I guess. And yes, a PlayStation Network login is no longer required, but there's still technically a reason to sign in. You can earn PlayStation achievements, trophies and stuff if that's your thing. You can unlock 2 bonus costumes. Basically, they're trying to use incentives to get people to log into PSN on PC instead of forcing them, which I think is the better move. Having one less annoying login to deal with is always going to be a plus for me on PC. It's just unnecessary. So while it's still not perfect with having the login stuff at all, it's easy to ignore now, which is about as good as we're probably going to get, to be honest. So going back to hardware, the game needs some serious hardware to run 4K, but at more modest settings, you don't even need an RTX compatible GPU. For most users, that'll probably be enough and the game will run fine, but we wanted to push this puppy to the absolute limit and see how well it would work with a 4090 PC with all the big specs and the ultimate ray tracing experience. You still have to have Windows 10 or 11, 140 gigs of free SSD, and the RAM requirements, but on the lower end, the system requirements aren't as bad as they could have been. So at maxed out settings, it works, mostly, but there are some problems that we do need sorted out. Before getting into all that, though, I just want to make it clear that with everything turned on, all ray tracing, and then the max amount of ray traced objects, the game does look incredible. It's so sharp and clean that it's almost uncanny, and the performance is surprisingly consistent.
Looks like one of Marco's memory crystals Miles told me about. I should check it out.
I was expecting a lot of stuttering going in, but I only really saw some stutters in the opening minutes, and once all that was done, the game ran flawlessly at around 80 to 120 frames per second with DLSS set to quality and frame generation turned on. There were a few oddball effects like some weird shimmering that you sometimes get with ray tracing, but 95% of the time it did look absolutely amazing. And again, like I said, on ultra wide, yeah. This has to be some of the best implementation of ray tracing too we've seen in a game. It just looks really clean and seamless and not forced into a look of a game changing the style. There's very little of stuff like strobing lights or extreme blurriness that sometimes comes with certain ray tracing effects we've seen in some other games. And with everything set to max, New York is very dense and detailed that it can almost look photorealistic if you stop and squint while using photo mode. The draw distances are insane. and there's very little pop-in. The game is just flat out a graphical powerhouse. Even with it being a little more than a year old, it's still one of the most impressive games out there. Just look at the details on Spidey's suit. This thing is so detailed, it's nuts. The shame about those bananas, though, they still haven't fixed them from the PS5 version, huh? But for as amazing as the game looked most of the time, and as impressive as the frame rate at 4K was, with, again, the best hardware you can get, unfortunately, I did eventually start experiencing a pretty serious issue. The game started crashing after playing it for a few hours. All this stuff didn't happen immediately. It only started to occur after running hot for a little while. I found that tuning down the settings would actually remedy the problem, but my PC wasn't exactly overheating, and the CPU wasn't a bottleneck. It was all a GPU issue or something up with the game itself, which is kind of a problem considering that we're playing this with, again, the best possible hardware, the best possible GPU on the market right now. Maybe the issue is with our model, who knows, but it was an annoying and easily repeatable problem. Hopefully this gets fixed up soon, and knowing Nix's track record, I think it probably will, but we can't let the problem go. It didn't crash just once. I'll always mention, yeah, I had a crash, no big deal, but it happened a few times here. And while the game's generous autosave made it so, you don't really lose any progress, it's totally fine, it's just one of those things that should not be happening. It's something that happens in the early days of PC releases and PC ports, and it's still not acceptable. Other than that significant issue, the game otherwise ran really well. You'd think there would be a dip every so often, like I said, but it was able to keep well above 60 FPS on our machine without any major hikes or inconsistent drops, at least past the few I experienced at the start, like in the opening, like I mentioned already. So it's a solid port with one glaring problem, but we might as well talk about the game a little bit while we're at it. I can't help it, it's Spider-Man, right? Not everybody watching this had a PS5, so Spider-Man 2, it's not like the craziest upgrade over the original game, but it's a solid sequel that adds in a few new mechanics that add some more depth and variety to some of the gameplay, simplifies some other things, but doesn't really do too much to shake up the basic formula from the previous. It's one of those kind of if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of sequels. It's basically just more Spider-Man, which is good, really good. It's your classic PlayStation single-player spectacle adventure with some of the most impressive set pieces we've seen in a game, big action moments. There are amazing missions in this game. Insomniac definitely topped themselves on that. The details are where people are more divided. Personally, I do fall into the camp, but I said this during the Before You Buy when the game first came out. I think it's not quite as good as the original game. There's a little bit of filler, some of the side content feels not as compelling, and many of the battles with the hunters start to feel repetitive over a while. It could have used another enemy faction. Ultimately, these are minor issues because, the game still does improve on the original in some other ways. Some of the side activities are actually better and lead to more rewarding stuff, like the whole Mysterio thing. And they've mostly removed the Mary Jane Miles sneaking sections that everyone hated. When they are here, you essentially have a little bit more to do as the character, as the player. So that's good. They're still not great, but at least they're better. There's also a lot of forgettable collectibles like the spider bots that don't really lead anywhere too much, and some side missions that feel like they're just set up for something that's going to happen later. But overall, the extra open world stuff is better in Spider-Man 2. Story-wise, I would say it does have some problems. It has some incredibly memorable moments, but I think ultimately as a collective whole thing, it's not quite as top to bottom strong and consistent as the original game. There's a couple of lulls, but there's a couple of cool surprises, like I said, especially if you actually read comic books. There's some interesting stuff here, but I can't really go into too much of it because I don't want to spoil anything. Like I said, some PC people are just jumping into this for the first time. Some of the mechanics, like the new gameplay mechanics, are a little divisive too, like the web wings, which as a mechanic and how they feel, I like a lot. It's very cool to experience, but it's a Spider-Man game, and I like web swinging more than anything. But hey, the city is much, much bigger this time, impressively bigger and detailed with all the unique neighborhoods. So you got to zip around it kind of quicker sometimes. So I get why the web wings are there. But the introduction of a parry system also mixes things up. It makes combat more challenging, and it does make the boss fights more interesting. But there's actually like a lot to keep track of in this game already. I mean, you've got the special abilities, the gadgets, dodge, the web zip, and the web shooters, the finishers. It's a lot to keep track of at any given moment. The parry can make things borderline unmanageable, at least if you're not like a hardcore gamer. You get used to it, but for some people, you might have issue. I personally do like it. It's not the smoothest parry ever in a game. It's not like, you know, Ghost of Tsushima or Dark Souls or anything like that. But like I said, it makes the boss fights a little bit more interesting. I get some people don't like it, but yeah. The split protagonist, on the other hand, definitely works, if only because Peter and Miles play pretty similar. They've got a few different special moves. Peter has a little bit more gadgets. Miles has some of those Miles Morales tricks, those extra powers, which do work in certain pinches, and how the characters interact with one another is nothing short of just absolutely awesome. The thing that always gets us when we do turn on these games, when we fire them up, regardless where, is just how good Spider-Man feels to control. Swinging around the city is so intuitive and easy. It was good in the first game, but it's even better here. The tricks feel better, the web attaching feels better, the couple little extra maneuvers they give you make you feel even more like Spider-Man because you could do some crazy shit. Couple that with the combat, like it's corny, but I will say it. It's a good Spider-Man simulator. It makes you feel like Spider-Man. Mission accomplished there, guys. So with all this said, Spider-Man 2 is a very good game. The greatest of all time, I don't know. Like I said, I think the original Insomniac Spider-Man game comes way closer to that. And here, once they iron out some of those issues, the PC version will be the definitive version of Spider-Man 2. Like I said, everybody's machine is different. Everybody has variables. These are the issues that we suffered. Maybe you're going to experience something else. Maybe your experience is going to be better. This is why you should watch multiple reviews and definitely read some Steam reviews as well. Kinks and all, this is the best the game has ever looked. Definitely surpassing the PS5 Pro version. They just need to fix the crashing problem, that issue that affected us, and maybe some issues that may affect others. So maybe hold off at least a couple of days. Like I said, do your research. It does feel like maybe on lower settings, it might be a little bit of a less bumpy experience, but if you're trying to go all 4K ultimate and maybe some ray tracing, then the performance for us was surprisingly solid, but the crashes were an absolute bummer. We hope they get fixed soon because, like I said, otherwise this seems like an excellent port. So there you have it, some quick impressions of Spider-Man 2 running on PC. Hopefully you got to see all this gameplay in all its glory. Hope you enjoyed it. As a before you buy, you know how this goes. We give you some pros, some cons, and some personal opinion, and now we want to hear yours. Let us know in the comments what you're really thinking. If you jumped in immediately day one, I'd love to know your experience. If you're one of the people like us who had some small issues, are you someone that's having disastrous issues, or are you someone that's having no issues? You never know with a PC release, so hit us up. If you like this video, clicking the like button helps us out. We really appreciate that. And if you're new, consider subscribing, maybe hitting that notification bell, because we put out videos every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
No, I'm helping you, man.
Someone get a photo with us! Mass criminals kidnap beloved newsman!
Some things never change.